maybe they get handicapped in their funding. That creates competition amongst ISDs. I've seen the ISDs here work together. I've seen the superintendents meet together and flesh out the great ideas and vet out the great ideas that they're working with. I think that's a great opportunity to even foster even more. But I do think that we have to stand behind our schools, our public schools, because I think they're a national treasure. They're teaching the next generation. That's the economy for us. We cannot turn our back on our public schools.
I think the direction I see the school choice movement going is not towards vouchers, but towards different centers of learning within public schools. I think that's where the trend is. It's happening in some of the Metroplex schools, and I think when you see things like the new Career and Technology Center that's going to open up in Tyler, that's the way things are moving. I think there's a conversation that could be had about special needs students, being able to perhaps those parents have the ability to take some kind of tax credit and move their special needs children to a place that is uniquely designed to help their child. I think that's something that Florida has done successfully, and I think that's something we could look at. But when I look at schools like Bullard and Chapel Hill, they've got a lot of options within the school as far as developing career and technology and things like that, but they're really, we've now opened that up in the graduation plans. We need to wait and see how that works out. So I actually don't see the political winds moving towards voucher. I see the political winds moving towards centers of learning within public schools as a way for parents to decide what's best for their children.
I think we have time for one last question, and then we'll go to the closing remarks. David, for the next question.
Okay, Mr. Shaver, an issue the state will face in the upcoming legislative session is water. Should our East Texas delegation do more to protect our region's water resources, or do we, as a region that's rich in water resources, have more of an obligation to share those resources?
We have the obligation to defend the rights that we have to our water. And that's one thing I worked on during the session. And we got a hearing from the Natural Resources Committee, and we raised the issue that the bureaucracy in Austin has some control over how we use our water that they were exercising without due process. They were exercising that against the city of Tyler in a way that was not appropriate. Fortunately, Farm Bureau had a lawsuit that was filed on the very same subject matter that was successful. And so we're going to get a chance to look at that. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to relationships. And I think for East Texas, you've got to look at our relationships with DFW in particular. And we have strong relationships there. And I think that's what we have to do. But our East Texas delegation, when we get together, we talk about water. And when I met with them before the session, we talked about water. We talked about water with the speaker. We have rights under Texas law to the water that's in those lakes. And we just have to make sure that we have the political will and the courage to stand up for it and work together.
I serve on the Lake Tyler Advisory Board, and Tyler brags about a 50-year water supply to serve this community, and that includes the population growth too. There's a lake that's been on the books for about 20 years called Lake Columbia. It's somewhere in between Troop and Jacksonville. 20 years that's been on the books, and yet still no money to build it. Even if we start today, it's about 10 years out before we see that lake starting to fill, and we're not even starting today. We've got a real problem meeting the demand in our community, just in our community, for the next 50 years. If we're 20 years out, and now we're looking at probably 30 years out before we really get that lake going down there, and that's if the money comes. We've got to stay out front. We've got to be a leader. In East Texas, especially, Wichita Falls is on stage 4 water restrictions today. West Texas needs the water. Dallas-Fort Worth needs the water. That's about a 100-mile, 125-mile pipeline that they're building up to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. If they'll build that length, there's no stopping most any other city from building a pipeline into East Texas. We've got the water. We've got to protect our natural resources, but we've got to stay out front. We've got to be creative in this state to build more lakes, more reservoirs to meet the demand of this great state, to meet the demand of this growing community, and to work with legislators along the I-35 corridor to meet the demand surrounding cities too, to make a win-win situation for the rest of Texas. I've got the resume. I've got the experience of doing that here in our own community. And I want to take that down to Austin and do the very same thing.
All right, thank you both. That ends our question and answer, and we have time now for closing statements from both of our candidates, and we begin with the challenger, Skip Ogle. Mr. Ogle.
As I mentioned, I've served in many organizations that serve this community. That's what drives the respect and the reverence that I have for this community. I've served on organizations including Bethesda, Meals on Wheels, Habitat for Humanity. I've also served on the TISD Foundation. I know the struggles of a public school. I've served on the TISD Steering and Technology, the new center that we have that's being constructed right now for vocational training. I also serve on the board with UT Health Northeast. I know the challenges that face this community. I understand the struggles that face this community. I've been proudly and I'm honored to be endorsed by statewide organizations, including the Texas Municipal Police Association, who have rated our incumbent state representative as one of the 2 worst legislators for law enforcement in the great state of Texas. Been endorsed by the Texas Medical Association, the Texas Hospital Association, Texas Association of Realtors. I am pro-growth, pro-economic growth, and I want to keep that. I want to keep that same drive in Texas for generations to come. Not us, but for the next generation. Also endorsed by the Texas Restaurant Association, and we're a proud home to a lot of great restaurants in this town. I've got the resume, I've got the track record in this community that I can take down to Austin and represent together. And truly, that's the definition of a public servant. That's the definition of an elected official, is to serve together. It's not one man, one woman, making their own opinion and flying off the cuff with their own legislation. It's one man, one woman that you send down there, that we work together, that understands the challenges that face this community, and that we can take those opinions, those struggles, from whatever sector of our community it might be, and face that in Austin for this great state. My name is Skip Ogle. I'm running for state representative for House District 6, and I'd be grateful for your vote.
Representative Schaefer.
The simple truth, Skip, is you've left some important things about your resume out. You don't like talking about being a career lobbyist, even though that's been your primary profession for well over a decade. You don't talk about coming right here into East Texas and helping to defeat a conservative Republican by giving hundreds of dollars of your personal money to a liberal Democrat. A liberal Democrat who opposed us on abortion. A liberal Democrat who opposed the voter ID bill that's going to allow us to use voter ID for the very first time in this election. A liberal Democrat who votes against us on things like border security and spending your money wisely. You want to see what man says, but what does a man do with his money? I think that should raise some doubts about your conservative credentials. And I think you have some credential problems when it comes to law enforcement as well. We've issued a challenge to you to speak out about some things in your background, but you've chosen to remain silent about that. But this is a public background check. The whole world can see what we're up to. I have a record of my own, and that is a record of voting a consistently conservative voting record, of being liberty-minded. When big business says, we need this, and it's going to stifle competition, I say, what does free enterprise say? I say, what does the man who's going to start the business with the spiral notebook in the front seat of his pickup say? I've stood on principle. My voting record indicates that. Statewide organizations like the largest business organization in the state, Texas Association of Business, have endorsed me because of my positions on free enterprise and the Second Amendment and pro-life issues. I love this community. I love this country. And I will continue to stand up and fiercely defend your conservative principles.